This is the Griffin Realty Group Ask-A-Griffin podcast, episode number 24, Negotiation. What is the reality price range? Are you a home seller or buyer who has questions about buying or selling residential property, but you can't seem to find an easy way to get your answers? Well, then, hey, you're definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Griffin Realty Group and the host of the Ask-A-Griffin podcast. Now, to help you take immediate action to get started in the right direction, if you need to sell or buy property right now or in the very near future, you can take advantage of our free step-by-step guides that are waiting for you over at griffincourses.com. That's Griffin, courses.com. All right, let's get started here. In this episode, we continue on the series about negotiation, and it's a simple question. What is the reality price range? And I know if you're a seller, you're probably scratching your head, so let me go a little bit differently into the explanation. You see, most people say, well, I'd like you to come over my property and tell me what it's worth. As if there were some magic that we all have as realtors where we could actually do something like that. In fact, what's worse, when you intend to invite 3 or 4 realtors over to your house, hoping that you're playing pricing it right bingo and that one of them comes up with justification to match what you hope it's worth, that's also dangerous. So what I'd like to do is just simply teach you about the reality price range and how you arrive at that, because there is nobody, no algorithm online especially, that knows what your property is worth, because it is still a very flexible number when it comes down to all of the humans that still get involved to make the offer, counter the offer. You typically have 4 different parties involved: buyer, seller, agent, right? That's what you have. So there are a lot of humans involved trying to make the market for that property in that minute area of 2, 3, 4, 5%, whatever it might be, when you really come down to it. So nobody really knows exactly what the property is going to be worth. And it's almost like we've taken sides. The sides that think, well, we can figure out what it's worth, and the other people that say, well, it's worth what somebody will pay for it. Well, it's better than both of those, to tell you the truth, that there is math, there are statistics, there's all sorts of data involved that you can use smartly to be better prepared before any of this happens. So let me go through this. The first point here is that your final price, the one that you accept the offer to, by the way, think about that. That's when all parties have said yes. Let that sink in for a second. Everybody has made some sort of compromise, and if it's in a hot seller's market, maybe you've priced it right and the compromise just comes from the buyer, said, okay, I'll have to pay it. But typically, a normal market has some back and forth during negotiation. So let's just say that the final price is going to fall in some sort of a range that is based on market data that you should be getting from your realtor and analyzing up front. And there is no perfect science to determining the range, but it is relatively straightforward on how you do that. So very simply put, when you hear the word comparable, for most sellers, it conjures up a little bit of a defensive stance, because they say, well, nothing's comparable to mine. Mine's unique. And you're right. You are right. I mean, it is really true, because we're not in the commoditized business, meaning we don't just print off of an assembly line the exact model every time. With a house, we have that locational difference immediately. You can't have one house inside the next house and be identical, right? So even condominiums or tract house building, where they have the same model style, you're on different floors, you're on a different lot, the sun hits it differently. And if it's not a model house that's been painted the same, now all of a sudden all the human differences are there. The landscaping, the color choices, the furniture, you get it. So there really is no such thing as a comparable. But when you begin to look at this as a professional, when I take a look at some data, what I will look at is, what did the money just buy? So in other words, if a seller hopes for a certain number, because we'll always poll sellers before we go out and visit them. Well, what are you hoping it's worth? What are you hoping to get for it? Well, that's what you're coming out for. No. See, you're already started off the wrong way. We're not looking for you to be in a defensive position. We're going to look at real market data, and we're going to once we get to your house, we're going to actually be able to compare your house, its location, its condition against what the money just bought recently and try our best to come up with what that means for you and your price range. So that's an analysis. You can't do a market analysis over the phone. You can't just do it in your office and send it out. You have to go to the property and you have to look at all of those factors that determine value. And then you have to compare it against what the money has recently bought in that category. And then try to reconcile those differences. No easy task. Henceforth, why it will probably forever be impossible to do this with an algorithm. Right? Algorithms, the last I checked, don't get in a car and go kick the tires at the house and try to analyze. They take big data, they take a shot at it. Not bad. I like that. I like that scientific approach. So do I. I take a little bit of an algorithmic approach to it before I show up, and then I make those differences. But this is based on real market data. This is not an opinion. You can't just say, well, I put this into it. I put that. That's irrelevant. At one point, it was totally relevant to you when you bought the property, for example, or you rehabbed the property. All that was real money and real decision making. I understand that. But now you're trying to figure out what it's worth today if you have a real reason to sell within the next couple of weeks, couple of months, whatever it might be. So you have to deal with the reality of the data that is the closest you can get to helping you determine what you should be doing, okay? Now, knowing all of that data and then determining a realistic range, and again, I know it. I go into houses, people are yelling and screaming, not at me, but they're yelling and screaming and venting, it should be worth this, especially expireds. Well, I'm not going to give it away, and I hear it all. I get it. I'm totally empathetic to it too, and I just let you have it. Go, have your moment, get it out. Then I go back to, why are we doing this to begin with? Do you have a real reason? Because ultimately, I'm going to be able to teach you what the right range is so that my marketing can even be effective. You want to talk to me about how you're going to market it? What are you different? Where's your office? None of that's relevant if you have the wrong price. So we have to first determine, are we even in the right reality range first? I walked into a house the other day, extremely different from everybody else's house. I mean, physically. Gorgeous setting on the waterfront, but just extremely different. And so I did the best I could, and I said, yep, you were in the reality range. So now, how did you do? What was the reality of being there? Well, we got an offer at this. Well, that wasn't a terrible one. At least it was at your assessed value, and everything on the waterfront's trading to a premium, so we could see where the premium to the assessed value is. But did you counter him? Where'd it go? I didn't really get a full answer that I needed, so it was difficult to really help narrow that down. But it was all data. And so some of it I brought, some of it I heard, and I was able to tighten that range up. And then, of course, solve other problems. There were some marketing problems. There were some digital marketing problems, and those are real, but all trumped by the wrong reality range, if that was there. And by the way, when they started, they were definitely outside the math. No doubt about it. Very simple. I could do it in minutes and said I would have never taken it at that number myself. I wouldn't have told you I could do it because I don't have any reality data, real data, to base that on. So if I can get there through that emotional first meeting and have people rooted in this, and then more importantly say, look, here's what actually sold around you when you were on, so you can look at that, and I know you'll try to explain it away, but this is what buyers really said yes to. Pay attention, because that will make you less emotional now that you understand the range, you understand what you're up against, and now it does become the realtor's job to get it done, or at least get more feedback. Now, the last point here I want to make in this reality range and how you'll probably end up in there somewhere. I know a lot of you will go begrudgingly to a tighter asking price, and you'll feel like you've already, quote unquote, given something up or given it away. And you'll begin to create a dialogue in your head about these evil buyers. Well, they're not evil, and they have a process. And some of them are not being guided by their agents well enough, so they're coming in with their emotions, and they're just lobbing these offers out there that are also not based on the reality range and also are based in emotion. So you have to remember those worlds collide. But please hear me say this. The best advice I could give a seller, and I give it squarely to all of mine, is always counter an offer, the original offer that somebody makes, because you never know how quickly a buyer might raise their price. I cannot tell you how many times we start off in a range and it gets the traffic. See, it's not marketing that gets the traffic in the beginning, especially. Marketing is an accelerant, but it is not the solution. Pricing it in the right range, then digital marketing preparation, making this digital package beautiful, let it tell the story, whatever you have to do to capture that story, drone photography, virtual tours, whatever. That all matters in the beginning so that when somebody sees it on the internet, because 90% plus buyers are looking, 90% plus of the buyers out there are starting somehow on the internet and they're making a digital choice. So yes, from a marketing standpoint, it's a digital choice, but they're also going to be comparatively shopping much faster than they did before. So we have to be there, right? So they've done some homework and they think they're all savvy. And maybe they don't really care or have a big reason to buy, so they come in low. Or maybe they do because they're in a business where they negotiate and they get beaten up all the time and they have to start low. I've done that with car dealership owners where I have seen somebody, it was a mid-range deal. We were asking in one of my markets, $440,000 plus or minus, and he came in with a $268,000 offer. And my seller got emotional. I said, just remember who he is. He has the money. He wants to do it, but what he does for a living is get beaten up all the time. So let's give him a token counter offer. Let's thank him for the offer in writing and say, look, if you can go out and find this quality house for this kind of money, wink, wink, then go do it. And of course he couldn't. Well, guess who bought the house in the force? That same guy. Because my seller listened to me and we countered. This happens at luxury. It's the same thing. Somebody might take an incredibly, a big bite at something that's been on the market for a long time. Let's say there's not a big market for this high-end house. Let's say we're up in the $5 to $10 million range. Somebody comes in half the price. They're just taking a shot. You can't blame them. They're looking at the market data, but a token counter might root out that behind that original offer was a real buyer. Okay? So always give a token counter. But more importantly, for you realtors out there that are listening, or if you're coaching your own realtor as a seller, if you have the math ready before you ever listed this, and I just did this 3 times this week alone, I took the math that I used to price the property in the reality range and I sent it along. And I said, if you think my math is wrong or the data is wrong, you send me back what you find. Wink, wink. It's just a matter of doing homework. So the reality range is based on homework. So let me reiterate this. What is the reality price range? Well, it's where the data science says you will probably fall. It's a probability analysis. So the 3 points here is your final price will fall within that reality range. You'd be surprised at how data-driven real estate actually is. At the end, and unfortunately we're looking at it in retrospect, in the rearview mirror, we can see the math and we say, oh, it was exactly what it was, X% of the assessed value. We knew that going in, and it traded just like that. Next, knowing the real range will prepare you to be less emotional. If you start off with data and science, you start to bring the emotional attachment, especially if it's your own home, your second home where you raised your children, your first home where you live, whatever it might be. The more data-driven you get and the more attached you stay to the reason for selling, the less emotional you'll be during all this. And lastly, all you sellers, hear me out there. Always counter an original offer, no matter how low you think it is, no matter how insulted you feel. And you do. And we're empathetic as realtors. We get it. You're insulted because it means more than money to you. But this is business. And ultimately, this is an asset that will trade in a range. Counter people. It doesn't mean that that person is or isn't going to come up to where you need them to be. It just simply means that you understand the game better than they do. So if you counter and you use data to pull them up, you just might win still. All right, let me summarize it this way. It's important that you ask your realtor to review the possible range, not the magic number, but the range within which your property might sell. And that way, you're prepared to make a smart counter offer based on facts and not emotions. But remember, always counter all offers, even when they start off low. All right, now remember, you can take immediate action to get started in the right direction if you need to sell or buy property right now or in the very near future, or in the long run for that matter, by getting our free step-by-step guides at griffincourses.com. That's GRIFFIN courses.com, griffincourses.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen so you won't miss out on any of these insights each time we upload. We also post all of our episodes on all the social media channels that we're active on, so you can just turn on notifications. Just go looking for Griffin Realty Group, and you won't miss those reminders. By the way, the Griffin Realty Group has a little gold logo of the mythical Griffin. Not difficult to find out there, okay? We'd appreciate it if you would share this content with other people that need to buy or sell in the near future, and they can get the help they need that way. Hey, thanks for listening, but remember, nobody's coming for you, so go get to work on your own plan for selling and buying property, and we will see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening.